Good morning and welcome to the OBX Wave Report for January the 10th, 2023, this bright and sunny Tuesday morning. And again, we come to discuss all things waves, weather, climate, and beach lifestyle. And apparently lately we're doing a lot of segments on democracy defense because there is a great deal of intersectionality between the need to act on climate and save our coastlines and the need to defend democracy because the same authoritarian forces that are right now standing in the way of climate action for the most part are also standing in the way of the global democracy movement and are working in many respects to attempt to reassert authoritarianism throughout the world. And the liberating force of climate action is a support for democracy as well. So yes, so we are doing a lot of talk about that, and it's probably something that is going to be a subject for those who act on climate and seek to invigorate and to increase the impetus to act on climate and defend our coastlines for some time to come. And I'm not going to hide from it. Not going to freak out because there is intersectionality and some people have trouble with nuance and context sometimes. But I think lately people have been more attuned to context and how one thing often relates to another. Um, we discuss broad brush topics here on the OBX Wave Report, and then if there is an issue that involves an expert, either in the realm of science or weather or even surfing or you know geopolitical analysis and all of that stuff, we are going to go ahead and refer you to the experts. But because we are here in a coastal community, and often I find coastal communities, especially those that are so close to nature as we are here in the Outer Banks, it often fosters a broad view, a broad contextual view. You're right there at the edge. You're at the edge of big sky, at the edge of big ocean, at the edge of big forces moving in nature, and these days, big forces moving in the world of humankind. And we're going to talk about that. So buckle up, buckle your chin strap. All right, but we're going to get back down to some more micro issues. We're not going to get so big and visionary for this little OBX wave report for today, or although, we might discuss visionary things, but we're not going to get specifically big and deep for this January 10th OBX wave report. Right now, weather conditions, and we are looking at the satellite picture. I'm having to update it because this was the one from yesterday, and NOAA is so good to provide us with these fantastic satellite shots. It's just glorious and gorgeous. These geocolor composite maps by NOAA are just so detailed and crisp. But what we see across the United States is a storm that is still impacting California. California has just been hammered by storm after storm after storm, and thankfully, right now the models are looking like California might start to see a little bit of relief, but that might not be much of a reassurance to California right now, or many Californians who have just been hit again and again and again by just multiple storms. And just saw some news today about some tragedies in California as the result of these storms. So I'd just like to give a shout out to all our friends in California, and hope you guys are safe, and I hope you guys are weathering these storms well. Um, the models do look like they're starting to point toward a lessening of severe impacts over there. So hang in there. Hopefully things will clear up there soon. Uh, you do see right now also the impulses fueling some higher level cloudiness and likely stormy conditions through the Rockies, through the northern tier of the central U.S. And crossing the Great Lakes. Here in the Outer Banks, we have partly cloudy conditions. It's pretty sunny with like high level clouds here, and it's cool and crisp and calm. And so that's a general picture of the weather conditions for the lower 48, focusing in on the Outer Banks. And let me make sure I've updated this. I'm pretty sure this infrared satellite shot is updated, but I do want to make sure that we got an update for you guys. Looking at the Atlantic and Eastern Pacific combo. Yep. So it was already updated. But so looking at the higher level cloud tops in the infrared satellite picture provided here by Tropical Tidbits, go ahead and check Tropical Tidbits out. It's Levi Cohen's masterpiece, in my opinion, and also check out Levi Cohen over on Twitter. Fantastic informer when it comes to climate and weather, particularly in the tropics, and particularly as it has to deal with tropical cyclones. Um, so yeah, we've got a storm system continuing to swirl off the coast of California, bringing in some rains, mountain snows, strong winds, and other severe weather conditions. And, it's just kind of a day after day thing there for California. We do see the impulses with the higher level cloud tops and likely stormy conditions up here over the Rockies and running in through the north central US and Montana and the Dakotas. And then we have a little impulse here over the Ohio region and the Great Lakes region, just sweeping on out with some higher level cloud tops. Here in the Outer Banks, things are not stormy right now, and we have very calm conditions, rather clear conditions, although there are some higher level clouds streaming in overhead in association with some of these systems. It is worth noting that in the Atlantic, we have this large frontal system and a low pressure at the end of it that's starting to form. And so yet one more in a succession of storms also heading to Ireland, Ireland and California being the weather hotspots recently. And I guess since we are talking about California again, I just wanted to note that there's a little storm here, well, a little storm, another storm lurking off the California coast. So even though the longer term models are pointing toward potentially less severe conditions for California, we still have a succession of storms coming in the near term. All right, so let's get in closer to the Outer Banks. And the wave conditions for the Outer Banks right now are in the range of 2 to 3 feet in the near offshore environment. Some of these waves are translating to the coast in the form of 2 to 3 foot waves. In other locations, waves are 0 to 1 foot and 1 to 2 foot. So overall, we've got 1 to 3 foot waves or 0 to 3 foot waves across the Outer Banks right now. And the conditions are 1 to 2 feet for many of the east-facing beaches. The higher wave conditions are at Buxton and in some of the south-facing beaches at Frisco and Billy Mitchell. And we're going to get into some spot locations for you guys now. And so looking at the specific locational reports for the Outer Banks, looking at Jeanette's Pier, we're going to go ahead and start off at Jeanette's Pier. The wave conditions right now are 1 to 2 feet at Jeanette's Pier, so consistent with what we've seen over the past few days at Jeanette's Pier. Those larger waves in the 1 to 2 foot range are coming in with a primary swell of about 6 seconds, and there is also a secondary swell running in there at about 7 seconds. Winds are out of the northwest at 4 miles per hour, so very gentle offshore with a cross-shore component out of the northwest there. And the air temperatures are cold, damp 46 degrees Fahrenheit down there at the ocean front. Ocean water temperatures are 54 degrees Fahrenheit. For this time of year, these air temperatures are about average, and so are the ocean water temperatures. So this is about what we would expect Over the coming weeks, things are expected to warm up a little bit, maintaining in the upper 50s, maybe mid to upper 50s, lower 60s. So that would be a bit warmer than normal for this time of year, but we are likely to see some colder snaps in the intervals there in between those typically warmer conditions. And one of the colder snaps is possibly this weekend, depending on how a frontal system lines up and whether or not we get a coastal low, and depending on how far south the cold air comes behind the system. So if we get more of a northeast wind or more of a northwest wind, will tend to determine the temperatures. And right now, weekend conditions are looking colder. And I'll talk more about the potential for a mild coastal storm to develop for the weekend. Um, Weather conditions right now for Jeanette's Pier are partly cloudy with an expected high today of 51 degrees Fahrenheit. Moving on south down to Buxton, which is seems to be the big wave spot of the Outer Banks typically. And that is true for today, although the waves at 2 to 3 feet down there at Buxton are not anything necessarily to write home about, but still some rideable conditions out there. So if you guys want to get out and get some winter surfing in, Buxton is not certainly not a bad choice. And so wave conditions there are about 2 to 3 feet with a primary swell coming in at about 10 seconds and a secondary swell coming in at 6 seconds. Winds are out of the northwest as well at 4 miles per hour, very gentle offshore flow coming in across the Outer Banks today with wind speeds all very gentle from north to south. Air temperatures down at Buxton are also pretty cool. I would say chilly at 49 degrees Fahrenheit. Ocean water temperatures are coming down and into the lower 60s at Buxton. So colder water conditions across the Outer Banks as you would expect in January. This is the coldest time of year right now for water conditions. So you're going to need your 3-4 millimeter wetsuits likely, your booties, your gloves, and probably your hoodies if it's going to be colder in the air or windier. So please pay attention to your cold water protection if you're out there taking on the surf today. Weather conditions at Buxton are partly cloudy with an expected high today of 53 degrees Fahrenheit. Now moving on west here, taking the right-hand turn on Route 12, we're going to head on down to Frisco Beach past the Billy Mitchell Airport. And we find that Frisco waves are also in the range of 2 to 3 feet as well, with a swell wrapping around there. It's actually coming a little bit out of the east and southeast, and it's wrapping around over at Frisco to provide some pretty decent wave conditions there in the range of 2 to 3 feet. Primary swell is coming in at 10 seconds with a secondary swell coming in at 6 seconds. Winds are out of the northwest at 4 miles per hour as well. So 4 mile per hour winds seem to be prevailing out of the northwest across the Outer Banks from north to south, south to north. It's just all over the Outer Banks. Air temperatures are 49 degrees Fahrenheit down there at Frisco, and the ocean water temperature is a tad bit cooler than Buxton at 62 degrees Fahrenheit. The weather conditions are partly cloudy at Frisco with an expected high today also of 53 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's our roundup of local conditions for the Outer Banks with our 3 select uh, locations, and we have a nice kale beverage to drink on this. Now it's the noontime. So we're going to bring in the, the noon day with a wonderful kale beverage provided by our fair lady, Catherine here. Thank you, Catherine. And all right, so we're going to go on and talk about some larger general patterns that will affect the Outer Banks and the lower 48 and the North Atlantic now. And looking at the Climate Prediction Center, I'm very fascinated at these by these models that are showing that for the East Coast and the Northeast, air temperatures in the 8 to 14 day period are looking to potentially be far above average for this time of year. Right now, the weather forecasts are showing temperatures in the range of the 50s and 60s, which is pretty warm. Um, I'd be interested to see if the analysis provided by the National Weather Service results in, or what the models are picking up results in even warmer temperatures than what is predicted in the longer range forecasts. 50s and mid 50s to lower 60s is warmer than normal for this time of year, probably in the range of about 6 or 7 degrees Fahrenheit. So that is certainly considerably warmer. But recently we've had some temperatures in the range of the lower 70s. So I'll just be interested to see if we get temperatures up into that potentially, far in excess of warmer than far in excess of normal temperatures. We'll just see. But right now the mainline weather forecasts are kind of zeroing in on generally warmer than normal conditions, but not like record warmth. We'll see though. When it says far above average in these 8 to 14 day models, that's when you start to think about, well, are we going to start seeing record conditions, even though the long range forecasts yet aren't yet picking up potential for record conditions in the granular temperature forecasts. I hope that is clear. But the long range model is showing a tendency for much warmer than normal temperatures for the well, I guess for the Carolinas, coastal Carolinas, for the Mid-Atlantic, and for the Northeast. So we'll keep an eye on that. One of the things that's really interesting to me is that the 8 to 14 day precipitation outlook is showing a bit of a respite here for California. It's still showing a tendency for above average precipitation conditions and above average stormy conditions, but it's not as severe as the previous longer term forecasts were. So maybe, hopefully, things will tend to tail off a bit for California and you guys will get a break over there. It is worth noting that the generally stormy conditions or that generally stormy conditions and generally higher than normal precipitation conditions are expected to prevail across the 48, lower 48, and also parts of Alaska. So just generally stormy in the 8 to 14 day, with the hot spots being in the Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi region of the U.S. Southeast, and then the extreme northern California and Oregon also seeing above normal precipitation in this model. I want to look at the global forecast system model for the United States to show you prevailing weather conditions or predicted prevailing weather conditions for January 10th and on through the next 10 days. And right now we've got a coastal storms battering California, and that's just one in a succession. And then as we advance the model, we see a strong storm begin to pick up in the Thursday timeframe for the Mississippi and Ohio River valleys running on down through the Gulf Coast into Louisiana and Texas. A low anchoring a strong frontal boundary with apparent extreme weather running in through. Looks like the Ohio River Valley and Tennessee particularly, I'm sorry, and Kentucky particularly. And then sweeping on into the U.S. East Coast by early Friday. And by that time we get the influence of a coastal frontal system in the Outer Banks with some relatively moderate to heavy rain, looks like, and then the front sweeps on off the coast, and then we get a relatively strong trailing influence along the frontal boundary here that looks like it might spin up into a little bit of a coastal low here. It's not showing as a hotspot low pressure, but you can see the swirl here and the wrapping around of the isobars and the pressure gradients. So that indicates that there's a little node of low pressure and a swirl of wind in there. So we are likely to see looks like, excuse me, winds coming out of the north and northeast on Saturday, and this looks like it's going to generate some interesting wave conditions into Sunday and Monday, particularly as here we go. Near coastal storm starts to form off the U.S. East Coast in the 990 millibar and upper 980 millibar range in this model. So not something to shake a stick at here as this near coastal low develops and we get a northeast flow here over the US East Coast into Monday, and that is predicted to kick up the waves. And the waves that I'm seeing in the models right now are predicting 5 to 9 foot waves in the near coastal regions and also running in through the beaches by Monday. So it's worth keeping an eye on this frontal system that is sweeping through and that is predicted to spin up a offshore coastal low that's expected to also kick up some stronger northeast winds and some higher waves. And we had been looking at higher waves in the Friday and Saturday timeframe in the last wave report. It looks like Friday and Saturday are also going to see a little bit higher wave conditions, but not as high as we thought, as the front coming in is not expected to bring in as strong a southerly flow. But what is now expected to happen, and of course, forecasts are changeable, but what is now expected to happen is we tend to get more of a coastal low or a near coastal low that brings in a stronger northeast flow and kicks up those wave heights. And let's see. I do have a different model here, but I actually don't think I'm going to look at the North Atlantic model now. We're going to go back to the wave models and just talk a little bit about near East Coast waves over the next few days. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this, see if it's updated, see if we can get a little bit further on into Monday. This is only a 5-day model, so I don't know if we're going to get all the way into Monday. But right now, wave conditions off the Outer Banks are in the range of 2 to 3 feet. And we're just going to go ahead and advance this model and see how the predicted weather conditions influence wave heights. So in through Wednesday, 2 to 3 foot waves, mostly coming in off the east primarily. Pretty mild, pretty gentle, not much change. And then into Thursday, we get similar conditions, not much change. And then into Friday, we start to see the effects of that front. So the front comes in, winds start to come out of the south and kick up some wave heights. And this is showing 5-foot waves in the near coastal region. These swells and waves are predicted to be coming in out of the south. So your south facing beaches and your near south facing beaches are likely to get the best surf on, or at least the tallest surf on Friday. And then let's watch as we get into Saturday. And boom, you see the swells, the direction of the swells shifts around. See, we get this northerly swell coming in. And the waves kick up to nearly 7 feet in the near coastal environment just off Buxton here. And you see that swirl, and that's indicative of a coastal low forming. So let's advance this just a little bit. So getting into a little bit later in the day on Saturday, we see the waves pumping up to between 7 to 8 feet in the model, and then 8.5 feet in the model as we get even later in the day, and you still have that prevailing northerly and northeast swell. So let's look at air on Saturday, and wow, yeah, you've got some pretty strong winds coming out of the north here at 34 miles per hour predicted. So this is near gale force conditions, and that's what's driving that swell. You've got that near gale force wind around the coastal low. And let's look at the pressure in this projected coastal low. And it's I say coastal low, it's offshore, but it's still close enough to the coast to have coastal impacts. And so let's look at the low pressure here. So nothing too crazy in the 1,000 millibar range, maybe the upper 990s, no, 1,000 millibar range. So nothing too crazy. Let's see if we can advance this. Do we? Oh, yeah, we can advance it. Okay. So it does seem to deepen in the models as time progresses. So 1,000 millibars is not crazy strong, but it's enough to kick up the winds here a bit. And let's go back to the wind model. And near the low, you do have gale force conditions. So this is strong enough to become a gale in the shipping lanes, and getting pretty close to gale force here near the coast on the Outer Banks as well, with strong northerly winds coming in. And let's see, the waves pumping up to, in the 8 to 9 foot range in the near coastal water. So that's pretty strong. I do want to look at weather because I'm just curious at how stormy it's going to be. So let's go ahead and look at total cloud water, see where the clouds are. Yeah, so with this system, the clouds are just offshore. So in the coastal environment, with those strong northerly winds, temperatures are likely to be cooler. We've got strong north winds, so pretty stormy conditions near the coast. But according to this model, relatively sunny. I would say maybe partly cloudy, maybe mostly cloudy, but doesn't quite look like the rain is encountering the coastline in the late Saturday. Let's go ahead and back this up. So backing up in time when the storm is closer. So earlier on Saturday, it looks like we might get some rainy conditions. Let's look at the total precipitable. Oh no, let's look at. There we go. So yeah, the heaviest rains offshore associated with the storm. Looks like the near shore rains are actually very light. So maybe some light rains early on Saturday. Yeah, it doesn't really look like we get much in the way of precipitation here on the Outer Banks on Saturday in association with the system. I'm backing up the model just so I can watch this thing form because it is fascinating. You see this little kink here in this frontal boundary. That's what turns into the low. You've got this unevenness in the wind pattern in the trailing into this front that then turns into a swirl that forms a low pressure system. And you already have like a trough kind of feature here, but the vortices, I guess, I don't know if that's the right term, but the wrapping arounds of the winds tends to generate that low pressure you see. And you can see these winds. I'm going to go back to the wind. You can see these winds wrapping around, and you've got kind of like a 3 core low pressure system here in the early day on Saturday, and then watch this thing start to consolidate. See those cores start to come together in that swirl there, and then you get a consolidated low pressure system associated with the front. You can still see the trough of the front digging in here, but you've got this low pressure system embedded, and it's the formation of that coastal low that creates kind of a nor'easter-like condition here on the Outer Banks. Although with this particular system, the winds are coming out of the north mostly, but still strong enough to generate some powerful wave conditions. I'm just going to go ahead and advance this as far as I can and see how intense this gets. I haven't really had a chance to to do a lot of analysis on coastal systems, so this is fascinating to me, and like for the Outer Banks specifically. Um, I just want to see how looks like we're still in the 1,000 millibar range. Let's get to the end of this model. So the storm is heading off up here, 999. So it's gradually intensifying, might get down into the middle 990s, looks like well, it looks like upper 990s, but still relatively strong, moderate to strong system, I would say. Moderate, nah, I wouldn't say moderate. I wouldn't say strong. So a gale, definitely, but not yet quite in the strong range. Maybe if you got down to like the upper 989s, we could call it moderately strong, but nothing extremely intense like we've been seeing in Ireland or California. But let's go ahead and just look at those wind speeds. Winds looks like they'll probably be kicking up with this system. So maximum winds in the western quadrant of this system. I say quadrant, it's a very broad low pressure system, but maximum winds in the range of about 54 miles per hour. And we have been focusing on this main low here, but it's also worth noting that you've got a sort of pirouette going on with another low pressure system off to the east, with also 50 mile per hour wind. 50-mile-per-hour winds over a much larger area. And now I'm just interested in how strong this low is because it does look like we're starting to get some transfer of energy from west to east here. So let's go ahead and look at that. Also in the 990s. Interesting. So kind of a double barrel low here off the US East Coast, bringing in these northerly winds and high surf conditions for the US East Coast, particularly for the Outer Banks with those northerly winds. And let's go back to the waves. I'm just curious to see the significant wave heights offshore with this system. And I mean, nothing crazy like what we've been seeing in Ireland, but looks like 10 to 18 feet significant wave heights. So pretty burly surf here for the East Coast offshore and the near offshore in the offshore environment. And then getting close to the Outer Banks, still 9 foot, 9 to 11 feet in the near offshore environment just off the Outer Banks. So stormier conditions predicted for the Outer Banks this weekend. Nothing too radical, nothing too gnarly, nothing too crazy, but I don't know. When we get down to the beaches and take some observations, it might look a little gnarly. I mean, 9 to 11 foot surf is no joke. And yep. And for the wave models at the coast, 5 to 9 foot waves predicted for probably in the range of Saturday through Monday with looks like the coastal wave model observations are pointing more toward Monday being the bigger waves. So we'll just have to see because it does look like these reports here might indicate some higher surf here on Saturday. So we'll see. We're going to keep a weather eye on it. We're actually not that far out. It's Tuesday, and as you get closer, the model predictions tend to be more accurate. But as usual, coastal conditions are changeable. And I didn't do anything on Ireland yet, so maybe I'm gonna do a look see at Ireland and see well, you know what? Let's just look at what's happening at for the west coast of Ireland because that's been kind of a big wave spot. Yeah, so we've got significant wave heights in the range of 15 to 16 feet just off Ireland with another impulse on the way of like larger wave conditions for tomorrow. And significant wave heights in the range of 20 to 27 feet in the near coastal waters. Um, let's see if these pump up a little bit. Yeah, so very high wave heights in the near coastal waters for tomorrow at about the same time as now, maybe about let's see, this is 0700 UTC. So definitely in the 20 to 24 hour time period, another gale sweeping in toward Ireland and pumping up very high waves. So yep. So that's all the analysis for whoa, hold on. Look at that. Okay, I'm gonna have to do another special edition wave report for the big waves off the California coast because those systems look nuts. But in any case, I can't segue or diverge too much than I already have. So for the Outer Banks, there's so many shiny objects I cannot resist. For the Outer Banks, wave conditions expected to remain in the 1 to 3, maybe 4 foot range for today, which is Tuesday, tomorrow, which is Wednesday, and then Thursday as well. And then running into Friday, strong southerly winds kicking up the surf for the south-facing beaches likely. And then coastal low is now predicted to develop, bring in some strong northerly winds on Saturday and Sunday and kick up the surf for Saturday, Sunday through Monday, possibly in the 5 to 9 foot range for the Outer Banks. So we'll just have to see. Thank you for joining me for the OBX Wave Report. And please do everything you can to help accelerate the clean energy transition and by doing so, protect our coastlines from the impacts of human-caused climate change, the coastal communities and the coast that we also enjoy and that we also love to visit, uh, to to choose as places for our livelihoods, and as places where we gain so much enrichment both in our prosperity and also in our sense of well-being. So thank you for joining me again.